Well, welcome everyone. This is Bill Van Nostrand speaking, and I'm the head of business for ClinActis in North America here. And I wanted to first say good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, because this is a worldwide seminar for people calling in or tuning in all over the world at this point in time for our exciting seminar. And what we're going to talk about today really is the challenges of conducting CNS trials throughout all of Asia, or APAC as some people call it, and the pathways to success. And first, before we start, I want to introduce two gentlemen that are going to be speaking today. The first is Dr. Christophe Tournier, who has more than 20 years experience in conducting clinical trials in Asia. He is an MD by trade. Infectious disease. He is the CEO and founder of ClinActis, a specialty CRO out of Singapore that's been in practice for more than 10 years. And he has worked for a variety of companies, large global companies, Sanofi in Asia, opening up their research operations in Japan, China, and India. PowerXL, helping Joe van Rickenbach open up his corporate operations over in Asia. And finally, PharmaNet before he started ClinActis. The second person speaking today is Paul Lim, who was born and raised and trained in Asia, out of the country of Malaysia. He has more than 15 years experience in clinical trials, the conduct of clinical trials and operations. And he has a master's degree in clinical pharmacy. And his last position before joining ClinActis was to run Asian trials from an operation perspective for Bristol Myers Squibb. So before I hand it over, I just want to make one announcement that this presentation is being recorded. It will be sent out vis-a-vis link with all the material to all of you post-program. And it'll also be listed or posted on the BioAlliance Network, which is sponsoring this program today. So without further ado, I'd like to hand this over to Dr. Tournier.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much, Bill, for the introduction. Today, we would like to present to you the situation of the dementia and Alzheimer disease in Asia Pacific, particularly in terms of patient population and also clinical trial environment, clinical research environment. So for that, we have an agenda. First of all, we will give you some statistics in this region regarding these diseases. Then we will focus on some key countries. And later we will give you the consideration for CNS clinical trials in Asia Pacific. Then what are the benefits of conducting Alzheimer's disease clinical trials in Asia Pacific. And then we will finish by some of the ClinActis experience in this field. So first of all, some numbers, some statistics. Actually, for you to understand, Asia Pacific is a large region in terms of population. In 2015, the population of Asia Pacific was 4.4 billion people living, and 12% of this population is above 60 years old. The common type of dementia are Alzheimer's disease and vascular dementia. And also the population with dementia in Asia Pacific will increase from 30.7 million in 2005 to 64.6 million in 2050. Next slide. Here we would like to give you some information regarding the prevalence and incidence of this population of this disease. And as you can see, between 2005 to 2050, the population of dementia patient will increase dramatically, and this in every countries in the region, independently of their economic situation or geography. Next slide. So we would like to concentrate on some key countries, and the first country is Australia. Australia, there are more than 400,000 people who are living with dementia in this country. This number is planned to increase more than 1 million in 2050. In Australia, the healthcare system taking care of dementia patients is very well organized with well-established institutions. The public sector, hospital, and private sector are involved in the primary care. Next slide. This is Korea. Korea is another very important country in this region. Up to 10% of the population, elderly population, suffer from dementia. The data suggests that the number of dementia subjects is high and will continue to increase rapidly. The healthcare system is very well organized for dementia patients in Korea, like for any advanced countries in the world. The primary care for system include private clinic, public health center, and general hospitals. And the standard of care and treatment available in Korea is very similar than any international guidelines. In Taiwan, almost 5% of the elderly adults have dementia. This represents at the moment 110,000 patients with Alzheimer disease and degenerative disorder. The healthcare system also is very well organized in this country with the hospital or long-term care facilities. And also all the standard therapies are available in this country. Particularly what we can tell is in the Taipei area, there are 4 leading neurologists in this area in Alzheimer who can be involved in clinical trials. So next slide, number 12, we are here focusing on Singapore. Singapore is a smaller country in size in terms of population, but the prevalence of dementia increased rapidly in Singapore. 15 to 20% of the total population will be above 65 by 2030. And almost 25,000 patients have dementia. Yeah, and we plan to, this is planned to increase also by 2020 up to 53,000 people. Like any advanced country, the Ministry of Health provide guidelines and organization to take care of the dementia patients. The caregiver are very often the family member and receive support from the government. And all kinds of treatment are also available in Singapore, like any advanced countries in the world. Regarding Hong Kong, this is also a country where the population is aging rapidly in Hong Kong, and in 2030, there will be nearly 3 million people at age 60 and above. Also, between 2009 and 2039, the number of dementia people will increase by 222%. Only symptomatic treatment are available in Hong Kong, and there are also 4 potential clinical sites for clinical trials in this country. Next country to consider, this is Malaysia. Officially in Malaysia, there are 50,000 people with Alzheimer's disease. Most of the Alzheimer's disease patients are not diagnosed in this country, particularly because of some cultural reasons. For the family members, it is normal after a certain age to lose consciousness. Alzheimer's disease is growing in Malaysia like any country in the world. The patients are treated in geriatric wards in government and private hospitals. There are nursing homes from private sector, also supporting people with dementia. In Malaysia, there are many investigator sites where we can implement as well ICHGCT clinical trials. So when we consider Asia Pacific, the country where we believe that clinical trials can be conducted in priority are Australia, Singapore, Taiwan, Korea, Hong Kong, and Malaysia. When we consider outside Japan and China. With no cure for dementia and MCI, definitely the patient and the doctors are very motivated to participate to clinical trials. The slide number 18, we would like to give you a general overview of the regulatory process in each of the countries that we selected. Actually, the regulatory submission process is very straightforward in all this country. The approval timelines are predictable. Every IRBs or regulatory authorities are well organized. Singapore and Malaysia are the shortest regulatory approval timelines. Hong Kong and Korea have the longest. Some translation needs to be performed, mainly for ICF in all the country, except Australia and New Zealand, of course. And protocol synopsis will be needed to be translated for Taiwan, and for Korea, almost every document for the submission needs to be translated. At ClinActis, we need in average 4 weeks to prepare dossier, including the time for the translation before the submissions. Okay, so I will pass now the presentation to my colleagues, Paul Lim, who will go in further details how to conduct Alzheimer's disease and CNS studies in Asia.
Okay, thank you, Christos, for the presentation. Very fantastic. So, okay, now let me bring all of you go to the regulatory application in different countries. Everyone know that, the regulatory submission, we know we have to prepare the list of documents. However, here, today's presentation, we're going to tell you some local know-how, how we do in different countries in order for you, to make the application success and, to get the approval in a smoother way. The next coming couple of slides here is to show you that, the challenges in different countries, and you can adapt this action and then to help you to make the regular application. For example, let's talk about the Korea. Korea is a country that are very focused in the technical part of the protocol and also the dossier that you submitted during the regulatory application. So the IMPD need to be well prepared before you do the submission to the Korea authority. Example, the preclinical data, the animal data, and also the clinical data need to meet there has a certain Korea requirement, regulatory requirement you need to meet. So every sponsor need to make sure that your dossier, you check the dossier again, the list of the requirement that required by the regulatory before you do the submission. And from here, also important that the translated language, from English to Korean must be good, because we have been facing a lot of experience here that, once you have different language used in Korean, it will lead to a different meaning. So the translation used in the regulatory package is very important in Korea. The next few things here is talk about the import license here. So as normal that we need to have import license to import the lab kit IMPD into Korea. Okay, the next thing we talk about is submission in Australia. I think the one thing here in Australia, we should know that before we go to Australia, we must have a local entity in Australia in order to do the regulatory submission in Australia. So all the submission to TGA need to be done by the local sponsor with the local entity. So the local sponsor name need to appear in the application form, in the insurance and ICF and so on. So this is one important thing before you want to do the trial in Australia. The next country I'm talking about is Taiwan. Taiwan is a Chinese-speaking country. Of course, apart from the documents in English, you need to translate most of the document into the traditional Chinese. So including the ICF, including the patient questionnaire use, as well as even the application need to be complete in the Chinese application form. Apart from that, a few things that you need to prepare before you do the submission in Taiwan, including that you need to prepare the lab guarantee letter. In Taiwan, when you want to export the lab sample out to Taiwan, you need to have a certain certification to ensure that the lab sample will be shipped for clinical trial purposes. So there's some lab guarantee letter you need to prepare. We have a lot of experience in doing this preparation of this letter. So this is one of the challenges that the content that you use in the lab guarantee letter need to meet the Taiwan authority requirement. And also the lab kits, some of the lab kits might have a local market authorization to sell before you can import for clinical trial. So this is for Taiwan. For Singapore, I think the import license, I think every country the same thing that we need to apply for clinical trial application and import license. The one thing unique about Singapore here is all the applications, including the IRB or the regulatory, they need the endorsement by the investigator before the dossier release for the regulator to review. So this one thing that whenever we start the trial in Singapore, we need to make sure that all the PI have a special SingPass. SingPass is a Singapore personal access that, as you can see from the slide here, this personal access is specially assigned for the investigator that can endorse the clinical trial application in their system. So before you start clinical trial, when you identify a PI, remember that you must help them to set up this SingPass if they don't have this SingPass at the beginning. So a lot of people miss this requirement, and then it cause the delay in the regulatory applications. Okay, in Hong Kong, I think the same thing that the import license also is one of the challenging that we need to use, because they have a translation need to be done in certain document and so on. So main thing here is the translation of the document that takes time, and it's pretty straightforward for Hong Kong application for DOH. So only the document need to be ensured that the document need to be translated and according to their requirement. And I think the next one is Malaysia. Okay, Malaysia is very important for if you want to do the clinical trial application to the regulatory in Malaysia. Important that the first thing that the ingredient of the investigator IMP that we have should not contain porcine or bovine ingredient, because they are the Islamic country. So if your product have porcine, definitely it's a no-no to start the clinical trial in Malaysia. And also a bit unique for Malaysia application, not like other country. Nowadays we use electronic submissions. We upload the document, then we submit online. For Malaysia, we are still going to the traditional way, which is you need to prepare the submission dossier, and you need to meet the regulator face-to-face to go through each document one by one, in order before they approve your dossier to be submitted and before they review. So for Malaysia, face-to-face meeting with the regulator is very important. And through this process, if there's a rejections, by the authority of the document that you supply, then you have to supplement it again, and you have to arrange another meeting to meet with the regulator. But this system also good that because we can know the problem in real time, straight away we know the problem, we identify, we can check with the regulator what they want, and then we can prepare accordingly. So, so this is very important that the way that how we communicate with the regulator. Of course, the next few things here is also remember that for the lab kit, we also need to have an import license for lab kit in Malaysia. At this moment, a lot of countries have medical device regulations, but for Malaysia, they don't have a clear medical device regulation, to control the lab kit to be imported for clinical trial. So what we need to do is we need to notify the medical device council in Malaysia to let them how many quantity lab kit will come in, and then normally they will provide you the approval letter for import the lab kit after you got the ethics committee approval letter. So this is the thing that we need to be noted. So apart from regulatory consideration, what other consideration we should take into account when we want to do clinical trial in Asia? Of course, the site capability in different countries is very important. So when we want to do a clinical trial for CNS study, so we need to find the site that have highly skilled and they have experience and they are GCP, ICH qualified site. And the most important here for difference to conduct CNS trial compared to other trial is you need to select the site that have highly skilled people that can do most of the assessment, because the CNS trial a lot of cognitive assessment. So if the site have experience and they know they have the skill to conduct this cognitive assessment, so it will be very helpful that you will get a good and clean data from this site. Examples or some of the rater that we use for Alzheimer study, they have been go through in certain training and they're familiar with all the rating and so on. So this will help to get the information for the outcome of the study. And also the next thing here is if there's MRIs, because in MRI and CT scan in the country, because MRI, the equipment in different countries, they have the quality will be different. So if your study require MRI and the CT scan, we will recommend that you identify a centralized vendor to do this screening, so that we have a standardized imaging and also have a standardized result. So also the next thing here, the most important also regarding the contract processes. Now we are talking about doing Asia, different culture, different background, different languages in different Asia countries. So the contract process also is different in different countries. So very important that when you do the clinical trial for CNS study, you need to understand that in which country which budget template that we should use. For example, in some country like in Taiwan, that their IRB or their hospital require us to use their hospital template. So we need to adapt our clinical trial contract according to the hospital requirement. So this is a thing that you need to take note before we conduct the trial in the country. The next thing we talk about here is the logistics. So we need to make sure that the site has adequate storage facility. Example, they have a room to store the IMP in a temperature control security way. And also they have the MRI scan validations. Usually we will do in some site, like in other country, if they are not advanced country, we normally will do an MRI scan validation during the PSV to make sure that we'll get the scan result according to what we want. And also some other things, a lot of support that we need to provide also, like prepare the study binder, with the proper instruction to the site, and in order for them to run the study. And also the EDC system, and always remember that not all the sites have this very good internet facility. So the EDC system, if you want to use the EDC, to ensure that we test the EDC system in the site to ensure that the system can be run. Okay, the next thing we're looking at here is also how the dementia being diagnosed in developed country and also in developing country. In developed country, they have the people here is, for example, people from Australia, from Singapore, Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Malaysia. The people here highly educated. They understand, the disease of dementia. So when they find their parents or the elderly people have this illness, they will bring their parents to the GP, general practitioner, and then from there the GP will do assessment, and then if there's a need for further investigations, they will send to the specialist, and then this is how we find our patients, the dementia patient in this country. However, don't forget about some other country like developed country. They are more, they have lesser education, like country like Indonesia, Thailand, Philippines. They usually do not bring their parents. When they find that they have some dementia symptoms, they usually do not bring their parents to the GP because they think that this is some of the aging processes. That's why, a lot of patients we are under diagnosis, dementia in this country. So this again, that actually in the real cases, what the benefit of conduct, the CNS trial in Asia Pacific, because we actually have a big pool of patient, Alzheimer patient also in this country. For example, from the experience that we have in Singapore, even for one, we have 2 sites in Singapore, we managed to screen 800 patients, for our Alzheimer study. Also, even for Hong Kong, we can screen up to 1,000 patients in order to get few eligible patients that to meet the CNS criteria. And also, it's less costly to conduct the trial, in Asia compared to US and Europe. And most of our investigators and the sites are GCP, ICH trained. Okay, next slide here, I'm talking about the CNS and AD experience that we have. In ClinActis, we have, as you can see, the next couple of slides here, we'll talk about, to share with you the experience that we have in conducting the study in Alzheimer's study. And in phase 3 study that we have conducted in 25 sites with 202 patients. And we also have experience doing the dementia study and progressive supranuclear and palsy and multiple sclerosis study, all in phase 3 study. And also the next slide, we also have experience in conducting the brain injury and also some phase 1 study in multiple sclerosis in these regions. Okay, so the next table here, we summarize, the experience that we have, we have been working in different study, the number of sites that we have used in the total CNS study that we have. For example, in Singapore, based on all the study that we have experience, for the 9 sites in Singapore, which is some of the replicated site in different study. So in doing all the trial here. In Hong Kong, we have experience in doing numerous CNS study in total 8 sites, in Taiwan 10 sites, Philippines 16, Malaysia 22, Thailand 10, and also Korea 12. So now, after we talk about the concentration that we have and in different countries and so on, and so what other things that potentially challenge when we really do the study, when we start to recruiting the patient. So I think everyone know, and also important, that taking consent is the most difficult one in CNS trial, because this consent not only involve patient himself, we also involve the family member, which is a caregiver to the patients. So the decision had to come not only from patient itself, also caregiver make a big influence whether the patient will join the trial. So very important that we need to overcome this by sharing more information to the caregiver to make sure that they also understand that why this patient need to join the trial, sharing some of the newsletter, the update information that we have. So also, if possible, if you have some poster, you can show them, the dementia condition, what will happen, and so on. So important that why they need to seek treatment, and also the reason to what are improvement they were looking at. So very important that we need to target at the caregiver and during the consent process. Also the next thing is you have to provide the support to the caregiver. As you know that the elderly have they are not their movement is not so sorry, excuse me. So for the elderly, they need to go to the hospital all the time. So sometimes it's not convenient for them to join a CNS trial. They have a lot of blood drawing procedure. So we, in some of the arrangement we can do is we can send some of the nurses go down to their home, to help to take the blood, instead of the patient come to the hospital. This is another way that they attract the people to come to this to join the study. Okay, so other potential is we can also say that another thing is very important here that we experience is emotional strain in elderly. You know that the most important outcome in the CNS trial is to obtain the cognitive performance, the assessment every time the patient comes to the visit. So very important that you need to provide the sense of familiarity and the sense of comfortable, for the patient to come to the hospital. When they meet with the same people, they talk with the same people. So when they do the test, they will be more comfortable, and they are able to perform to provide the test. So very important that for this trial we have to ensure that there's low staff turnover, and we should have a dedicated facility, for the patient to come, and not to change all the location from time to time, so that make the patient confused, and then at the end you jeopardize some of the result as well. So this is one of the things important. And also we have to make note that some patients are reluctant to withdraw the blood too frequently in the trial. So if possible, this is the thing that we need to be careful when we enroll the patient into the CNS trial. So our success story here is because based on our current Alzheimer study, which is running, the challenging that we have mentioned here is we also look at some of the subjects that have actually the weight is above 50 kilogram, and they do weekly blood taking. But actually this restrict a lot of patients that join the study, because they don't want to have too frequent blood taking. So what we do here is we have tried a lot of effort, to share, to have a meeting with the PI to explain the rationale of doing the blood test, in clinical trial, why we need to withdraw the blood and so on. And also we have do a lot of motivation visit to the site, to motivate the staff, because there are a lot of high screen failure rate. So very important that you meet the staff and then to motivate them, and also share the newsletter to share the latest progressions, how many patients that have been joining, so to make them more comfortable to enroll more patients. And also, if there's some good practice, how other sites they recruit patients, we also share it with other sites in order to help them to do a successful CNS recruitment in their center. So very important. So what we have here is, again, summarize that we have proven experience in doing this CNS trial in different indications. CNS trial is very complicated, and we managed to demonstrate our ability to manage this trial from phase 2 to phase 4, and we have extensive experience in different countries, from the feasibility, study startup, and patient recruitment as well. So we have our experience. So here are some of the points that, based on our experience, we like to share with you some of the consideration that you need to take note before we do the CNS trial. Number one, you have to look at the design and the development of the CNS trial to ensure that the design, for example, the body weight is meeting the local requirement, and also the biomarkers and other validation approach, so that we make sure that we use some of the diagnostic kits and also the assessment according to the local requirement. Also, we have to look at the patient recruitment strategy, and also make sure that some of the translation of the study material assessment tools is validated. And also, we must ensure that the rater and whoever do the assessment is highly trained. And also, we need to have some vendors to support in this CNS trial, for example, the central lab, IWRS, and also maybe some drug depot or MRI vendor. So let me summarize the advantage of conducting the CNS trial in Asia. We have a large and increasing size of dementia population in our region. And also the patient here, we can provide this optimal care for patient because most of the patient in Asia here is low income. They don't have insurance. They would like to, to join the trial in order to receive optimal care for their disease. And also in Asia, they have very little competing trial. So it's good that, if you have some trial for the patient, they are willing to take part in the study, and doctors are motivated to do that. And also, we have a large number of patients with dementia living with caregiver. And also, we are able to recruit the motivated clinical investigator from our experience, and also involve some of the KOL who have worked with us, to support, support you to conduct the CNS trial in our region. And also, we have very good hospital infrastructure, healthcare team, and also very straightforward regulatory environment that help to enable the clinical research activity in this region. So the key challenges here is to conduct the trial in Asia. First, you have to be aware of the protocol criteria that you have set to do the clinical trial in this region. For example, in Asia, we have a low BMI less than 18. The criterion in Asia normally is less than 50, versus the Caucasian maybe will be higher. And also some of the less experience of the site team here, so we need to train some of the site team to conduct the trial. And also we have to find the ICH GCP compliant site, and also be careful. We have to be special attention and support to the caregiver when we want to do this clinical trial, CNS trial. Also language and cultural barrier, and also the distance for patients to travel for care when, especially for elderly people, they need to travel to the hospital for protocol visit, and frequent and long-term follow-up protocol visit will cause inconvenience for the patient or the caregiver. So the list of the few key here is to share with you to overcome the challenges here. To what we have discussed just now is to ensure that we have appropriate protocol design. We train all the investigator and site team. We need to build a good relationship between our team and the site staff in order, to support them in recruiting the more patients. And we have to motivate the investigator from time to time. And also we have to give them some results. We can set up a referral system, because they refer from GP, so we can set up some referral system from GP to the investigator. We also can give some education material to increase awareness for the physician or for the patient to motivate them to continue with the study. We can also advertise through the newspaper, radio, and poster, how to make the awareness in the public. Also, we can arrange appropriate transportation for some of the elderly patients, compensation for caregiver time if they need to accompany the patient to the protocol visit. Also important, frequent contact by phone by the site staff to the patient will help to motivate the patient to continue with the study. Of course, if there's any newsletter talking about the recruitment status, about the product, and so on, it's good to share with the team. So here ends my presentation. Thank you much for your attention.
We received some question that we will try to answer. The first question is e-consent a possibility in these regions? Has it been tried much? This question, actually, we don't have a lot of experience with e-consent in Asia. Majority of the country we selected here for potential clinical trials in this region, definitely technology is here. You know very well, Singapore, Korea, country like that, definitely there are no doubts. So it's possible to use e-consent, technique-wise, yes. The only thing is, at the moment, we don't have a lot of experience in Asia with this kind of concept, but this is something that we can imagine in the future will be extended and developed more and more. There are no technical barrier anyway for that. Anything, Paul, to?
Yeah, true.
No. Another question is they might consider a virtual remote trial solution for extending the trial to the patients. That's a good question. Virtual remote clinical trial solutions. At the moment, the sites, they don't have really the experience of that. And we do clinical trial in Asia, I would say, classical way, with the patients coming to the hospital and the investigator selecting the patients. That's the most common way to do clinical trial here.
Yeah, true. This is Paul here. Also in Asia here, the elderly people like to visit the doctor to have a touch or to have a conversation with the doctor to feel more comfortable, more rest assured, they are being taken care. So imaginary in the population in the trial here, the patient will prefer to go to see the doctor themselves rather than have this virtual remote trial things happening.
Of course, this presentation is recorded and the slide will be available for the participant. Also, I wanted to just clarify that the country we selected here is because we have in mind that this country are the most equipped for be part of international drug development and potentially also part of global studies. The countries, they have regulatory process very similar than Europe or US. There are no delays or difficulties to obtain regulatory approval in these countries. And also because the sites have experience to do clinical trials, global clinical trials, that's also the reason why we selected these countries particularly for this presentation.
Christophe, this is Bill. Could you expand for a minute on the new regulations that have come out of China in terms of allowing data from outside of China to be submitted to help accelerate approvals through pre-approved CFDA sites outside there? Could you expand on that?
Yes, definitely. China is a very large country, a lot of potential, a large population, a huge market. Nevertheless, the regulatory process is very complex in China, and it's difficult to include China in international drug developments or global clinical trials because of the regulatory timelines. Nevertheless, recently we have a new regulations, a new model that is now under the process of being implemented. Definitely, the country is now more open to accept foreign data because so far it was necessary to do every studies and every phase of the drug development in China from phase 1 to phase 3. Now it looks like the authorities are more open to receive data from overseas. Nevertheless, it's on the way. They may not accept data from anywhere. And what we can use is the fact that the CFDA, the Chinese authorities, they certified already 4 sites in Taiwan. And then, for example, we can imagine very well that we can perform, for example, a phase 1 study in these 4 sites, and this phase 1 study will be accepted by the authorities in China for the rest of the clinical trial process. So that's something new and something that effectively ClinActis can support the sponsors because we have a very well, we have capabilities in Taiwan. We know very well the sites, and we can do this kind of studies in Taiwan to support the regulatory dossier in China, mainland China.
Thank you, Christophe. A further question that some people have asked is that for the Alzheimer's and dementia global study that you're doing or have been doing in Asia, what % of those sites are being done with neurologists and psychiatrists, being that's their specialty area?
Yeah, the majority of the sites are neurology departments for this Alzheimer study. Case by case, in some country, we have 1 or 2 psychiatric sites because they have experience conducting studies in the area, because the head of department is a key opinion leader in the field. So it's more like a case by case. So I would say more than 80% of our sites are neurology department specialty.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? You can, on the lower right-hand portion of the screen here, they're under Q&A, there's a hand there, and you can push that and ask your question within there if there's additional questions to be asked. If not, this recording was pre-recorded or recorded during the process with the slides in PowerPoint, and all that information will be sent to all the registrants. And if there's additional questions after that information is sent, please feel free to get back to us with specifics, and we will follow up that with in a very quick turnaround time period. So unless there's any other further questions, we thank everybody for taking the time of coming in this morning. And we know that there are friends from Singapore who made this presentation, or 12 hours time difference. So it's almost 10 o'clock at night there in Singapore. There's people from Europe that have called in, so we thank them at the 6 to 7 hour time difference as well. So again, everybody, thank you. Christoph, thank you. And say thank you to Paul as well. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Oh, sure.